Alrighty, tonight we are joined by Mr. Jim Fischer of Reps Fitness, based out of Arizona, United States of America. So Jim's background is a bit of mixed match of everything in the fitness industry, from training people, working with people, now to selling highest quality of equipment on the market to gym owners, primarily across the United States of America. So how I got to know Jim was a couple of years ago at Charles Poliquin's the facility grand opening in Colorado Springs. There was about 100 people at the, probably more like 120 people at the event, including vendors, his personal guests, and people who paid to be there. And there was a massive steak dinner afterwards at this chop house. And Jim was one of the people that would be considered to be at the Last Supper for Charles, in terms of, because 3 weeks later, unfortunately, he passed away. So Jim, take it away. Tell everyone a little bit more about who the hell you are.
Well, I started in this industry many years ago in 1989. Prior to that, I started when I was 12 years old. I just had a passion for fitness. Thought what I would be as a gym owner, and I did that. It's like running an adult daycare center. It's not everything it's cracked up to be, but it was the experience that I had set a goal for and I accomplished. And I said, okay, let's get to the manufacturing side. Let's see how these things are built. Let's see what makes them tick. I have a background in motorcycles, whether it be race bikes, the Harleys and so forth. I was a service manager at the age of 18. So a very young service manager. So I got to learn the inner workings of motorcycles and equipment. And then that translated into learning the inner workings of the equipment. So combined with the biomechanics, the kinesiology, and knowing how a piece of equipment should be built to match a user's strength curves, plus the mechanics and the construction, the durability and the liability and the safety that goes along with it, man, I got all those bases covered. So fast forward, in 1992, I started my own business at Reps and Fitness. And because I've been in the industry so long, I'm not forced to sell one particular brand. So I've been grandfathered in the industry, and I don't work on commissions. I don't have to meet any sales quotas. So I'm the perfect matchmaker for a coach, because I understand what they're trying to accomplish, getting a certain training effect. And your typical sales rep is going to sell what they're told to sell. They're trained to tell you whatever they need to do to move that volume, to meet their quota, to meet their commission. Otherwise, their job's in jeopardy. I'll pretty much tell them to piss off. They tell me, well, what's your quota for the year? I don't have one. It's whatever makes sense, whatever's in front of me. That's what I'm going to take care of and give a priority to.
All right, so that's really interesting as well, because when people are purchasing equipment, they're looking at not just, what's the job going to get done with this piece of equipment? They're nowadays looking more and more towards not just the quality, but the aesthetic appeal of the piece of equipment. So what are the kind of the main lines of stuff that you carry? What are the Rolls Royces that you carry? The top of the line. That's what we want to talk about, or the top of the line equipment pieces out there.
Well, top of the line, I always look for our coaching network. Training effect is the most important thing. It doesn't matter how cool it looks, doesn't matter how durable it is. If it doesn't match the strength curve, if it doesn't allow you to do your job correctly and help you earn money, it's a complete waste of money. For that sake, for getting Taiwanese equipment, I just soon get a broomstick and some dumbbells and a couple cables and call it a day. Do something like Bill Pearl would have done back in the 60s. So the way I liken it is to the coaches is like having a master mechanic. If you went into a auto shop, you'd expect to see that master mechanic having a nice snap-on tool set with nice tools, not just a pair of vice grips, a hammer, and a screwdriver, and hey, go have at my car. So the visual impact does make a little bit of sense. You want it to look cool when you go into your studio, but training effect is number one. Liability issues is number two. We don't want people getting hurt or losing a limb or chopping up the tip of a finger, or even your coaches because they've done something stupid. And I was on the design team for a few different manufacturers, and we catch these things that before they go out to production, where the average company doesn't catch. They will cut corners whenever they can because they have to make profit, especially when you deal with publicly traded companies. Publicly traded companies are horrible sometimes because they answer to the people that they're paying dividends to. They don't really care as much about the person that's buying the equipment. And also, when you look at the gyms, they care more about the membership than the member. So they'll buy whatever they can, cycle through, save money on, just get people and bodies in the door. But the premium equipment out there, I look at Atlantis is a premium, Rolls-Royce, Prime, Evanco for barbells, dumbbells, and weights. They've been around forever. Their bars are among the best in the world. Comparable with Eleiko, Usaka, So I deal with Eleiko and Evanco. So between the two of those, we can get the perfect mix. I like the guys at Evanco better. They're easy to deal with. I know the ownership personally, and the history, the ease of doing business. In this day and age, you want a person to do what they say they're going to do, both on the rep side and the factory side. And we don't see that very often.
So from that, why is it that in the age that we're in right now with pandemic, border closures, restrictions, and especially right now, extreme supply chain issues, why do you find that some of these companies still aren't kind of putting the customer or the purchaser of their equipment first and trying to put it so that they have a great name behind that equipment?
That's a good question. And it's kind of complicated because we have such an issue with people not wanting to work, finding quality labor. The training that goes into building a machine, the robotics, the angles, every piece of equipment is different. So like let's say, for example, when you build a car, you have an assembly line, you're going to make thousands and thousands of that same car. When you order a piece of equipment, you're going to order one lat pull down, which is radically different than your chest press, radically different than your bicep curl. So, and you have 150 to 200 SKUs of every possible thing you can think of. Companies like Paramount in the days of old, they were manufactured domestically here in the States with American components. They even made their own pop pins. So right now, let's say, for example, if you went to a company, any particular brand, and they built 80% of their equipment, but they don't make their own pulleys, and they don't make their own pop pins. Well, you can have 90% of the machine done, but without any pulleys or pop pins to hold the seats together, you're boned. You can't use it. So you have to wait for that $50 or $100 component to come in, or series of components to finish the job. Or you send out something that's makeshift, and that's not going to fly either. So finding the quality help, cost of shipping has gone up, from stuff coming from China and offshore. These containers that I used to pay $1,700 to $2,500 to send a full container over to Saudi Arabia or Austria or Germany, now that same container can be anywhere from $22,000 to $27,000. So things are just completely crazy behind the scenes. So manufacturers are scrambling. They even the worst manufacturer wants to do volume, but they can't. They don't have the infrastructure. They were not prepared in any way for what we do. And it's not like having watches or VCRs where you can have warehouses stacked full with them. You can only fit so much weight equipment into a warehouse, because it takes up so much doggone room. I have one manufacturer that was telling us they had everything done on the machines. They did everything domestically, but they got their weight stacks from offshore. They couldn't get any weight stacks. So what do? You start doing the Fred Flintstone thing. You start loading rocks on your weight machine. I suppose you could. So they started cutting their own plates, which is a very slow process. And if you don't have the tooling and the casting set up for it, and the people that'll work for $3 an hour, it's not going to happen fast. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Even a company like Free Motion, they're one of my top companies. And I hate to use the word because Charles would be like rolling over in his dust. Cardio equipment. They build some great cardio equipment, which is not what we use in the Pelican group for coaching. But in some places, they may say we need to put a treadmill or two in here or an air bike or two just to kind of get certain members in so we can pay our bills. Not everybody has the luxury to train elite athletes to actually make money. You have to maybe incorporate some of that general population in there. And, those are some things that Free Motion provides. And they build an okay strength line. They do a good job at it. It's just not to the level of Prime and Atlantis for the variety and the plate load stuff. But it's good enough. They do some really good free cable machines, which are easy to get. Their lead times are roughly about 8 to 12 weeks. But they make most of their stuff here in Utah.
Okay. So the companies that you've kind of mentioned so far being the Rolls Royce. So Atlantis, that's Canadian made. That's made down the street, like in effect, down the street from me, just down the highway. And you've got Prime. They're in Franklin, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So like someone like me being in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, it's not that far for them to ship to me. Right. But for them to even ship to you, it's got to go quite a distance because it's got to go to Arizona. Right. And then you were talking Eleiko. So like everyone knows Eleiko for the most part is Sweden based, but do they like through you or elsewhere, do they also have manufacturing done in the United States, or is everything strictly done by them in Sweden?
Yeah. Everything's done in Sweden. It's brought over here in containers. They stock up their warehouses, which is domestic, and they have enough volume to handle. But when they are out of stock, they can be out of stock for a very long time. So some things you have to make certain of. If you think you need 100 plates, order 120, because it's going to cost you just as much in freight to ship those 20 plates as it will to ship 100. So over buy your weights on your plates and stuff like that, because usually what happens is you get into your place and you order another plate loaded machine. Oh, I need some more plates. Now
shipping and freight again, yeah.
Yeah, the freight will be more than the plates are. So it's overestimated on the plates. It's critical. Dumbbells is a different story. Sometimes you might want to double up on like in the gyms, not necessarily the training centers. But if you know that you use 20s, 40s, and 80s, like 10 times more than any other dumbbell, you probably want to double them up in the beginning, because the freight to ship those 3 dumbbells might cost as much to ship the whole entire set. I mean, crazy, because it takes up the same amount of space in the truck to fill one of those crate boxes that you put the weights in.
Okay. So now to break the fourth wall and be like, hey, trucking companies, we're sorry. We're trying to reduce the amount of business that we give you so that we can make it better for gyms to be able to afford high quality equipment.
Right.
Because that's one of the biggest issues that everyone has right now with, regardless where they are in the world, is shipping prices have gone up. So you just gave a quick little hack on how to beat the shipping costs. And even though, okay, the initial shipping cost, say, is $1,000. We'll use that as a nice round number. Well, if you're now having to get a second set of dumbbells that you were going to need to get anyways relatively soon, instead of spending $2,000 total in shipping by shipping 2 sets or 2 amounts of it, it might be better to maybe suck it up a little bit, spend a little bit extra right now and only pay the shipping once. And you might even be able to, because you saved that $1,000, reinvest that into another piece or another add-on. Like for example, with Prime, well, if you don't do shipping twice, now if you have their, for example, Prodigy rack, you might be able to now add on the seated row attachment or the step-up attachment, all for the same amount of shipping, but instead of paying shipping twice, now you take that second amount for shipping and now you add more for our clients, members, the people we serve.
Exactly. And remember, these are tools. So you always got to figure out, what tool do I need to do my job? And in the beginning, you try and do it as little as possible, or you go to some cheap company like a Body Solid or whatever, and It's basically beefed up home equipment. It's kind of embarrassing. It's kind of like going into that mechanic we talked about, and instead of seeing Snap-on or a high quality tool to work on your Mercedes or BMW or Audi, you see something that you got at Harbor Freight, you know, where you buy a Snap-on wrench, it might be $20 for that wrench. You go to Harbor Freight, it might be 79 cents. It looks the same in a catalog, and by all means, by all specifications, they say they do the same job, but they are so radically different just for that one piece of metal. And we can find that in weight plates. In the old days, we used to steal the manhole covers and bring them into the gym because we didn't have heavy enough plates. So there's a lot of guys that have done that. And, of course, it's, you can get arrested for it. I'm not advising it. But they were probably more accurate than the weights that they make, these cheap weights, which they can be off 20%, in the weight. So you take a 45-pound plate, and you hear guys from the old powerlifting days, they would take magic markers or chalk, and they weigh each individual plate, and they take 145 and say it weighs 43. Another one would weigh 46 and a half. Then they sort of put them on the bar so it was balanced. You can't do that. You can't do that when you're messing with an athlete. Obviously, the danger of tearing a rotator cuff by having the imbalance to it is there. So you want to have somewhat of accuracy. We're not usually doing like sanction lifts, if you will, within the coaching room. But when they go out in the field, that's why you'll see in the Olympics, you'll see things like Eleco because they're precision balanced. When it comes down to an ounce or so that can make or break a gold medal, man, you want to make sure that you're lifting the right weight.
Yeah. And you want to make sure that weight is balanced out too.
Exactly.
It says like that Lashka guy from Georgia who just snatched like the most insane amount. I think it was like 220 kilos or just something, a stupid amount of weight. Now, if the weights aren't calibrated and one side of that bar is 5% heavier than the other, he's not necessarily going to complete that lift. Whereas by having it machined down properly, you're going to get the right lift. It's going to be balanced. Now, when he's getting under that bar to overhead squat after snatching, he's going to make it, it's going to be possible. And he's not risking having this happen or having one side of his one shoulder pop off.
Exactly. And the quality of the bars is a big thing too. Ivanko in their early days, they didn't know what they were doing. They just thought it's a piece of iron. You just put it on there to end caps on there and you throw the weights on. What could go wrong? And they started getting calls in that, hey, your bars are breaking. So that's impossible. It's just it's a piece of metal. What they found out is by chroming it, it makes the bar brittle. So it makes the bar brittle and it'll snap. And there's a story about I think it was a Russian lifter that was doing a clean or whatever he was. When he got up to here, the bar snapped and the jagged end went through his neck. He was dead before he knew what happened to him. Pretty dramatic experience. So, and I've had a kid here at one of the high schools. This is going back about 15 years ago. The school did not want to put out the money to get good Ivanko bars, and we were talking about $500-600 per bar at that time. They're like, "There's no way, no how." They went out and they spent $129 to get 4 bars. A month after, one of their star athletes was doing a deadlift with a modest amount, but heavy enough for a high school kid. He was doing a 350-pound deadlift. As he was pulling the bar up against his legs, the bar snapped and the brittle end went through his femur. So you end the kid's career. Now you got a lawsuit on your hands. Behold, the very next week, I got a purchase order for 4 stainless steel German needle bearing Ivanko bars that were about $1,200-1,500 each. So they found the money, but it took something drastic to happen for them to pull their head out of their ass and say, we need to spend the right money on these bars. So a good bar, an IPF rated that they have, it's going to run you about $600. But that $600 is going to translate into making your job easier. And you have the peace of mind when somebody puts 700-800 pounds on it and they're doing a pull on the floor, off the floor, or a squat, that you're not going to have something stupid happen. So what they learned in the beginning is that you have to take your time and build the bar correctly. They test every single bar that they manufacture magnetically, and with some kind of device where they can see if there's any brittleness to it or there's any imperfections in it. So what they did in the very beginning is they would do their overhead, press. They'd hold the bar overhead with 135 pounds, and they dropped it, and 80% of their bars broke. So they realized we better get to know what we're doing. That's why they made it very clear that they were going to do the best job possible. So that would never, ever happen again. I don't think I've seen an Ivanko bar break in the 30 years I've been doing this.
That's a good track record with those bars. It's like you always hear the same thing when it comes to Eleiko, people having their bars from before I was born, bars from like the 60s and 70s that they're still using. Like high quality will last. It's that age-old saying, buy it once, use it forever. But it has to be high quality. If you buy something cheap, you're going to have to replace it soon.
You will. Yeah, you will. Or somebody's going to get hurt, and you're going to end up paying a shit ton more than that bar ever was.
Yeah. So these days there's a whole bunch of different coatings on bars. You've got Eco, Cerakote, spare steel, stainless steel, zinc plated. I think that's it right now. So what is the difference between all that, and what does the coating do exactly?
In an industry where it's like the same thing over and over again, like the Cerakote, it's what they used to coat guns with. It's going to help protect the material on the bar. But realistically, it gives them the fruity pebble colors that they like. So it just brings some color into your gym. It gives them something new to sell and market. The black oxide bars are proven. They last forever. The zinc plated, they last forever. So the stainless steel, it's a matter of what the environment you have. If you're in a very humid environment, you got a lot of sweat going on the bars. Stainless steel is very good, but it's also very expensive. You just want to avoid the chrome plating. That's the big no-no. Do not get sucked into buying a chrome plated bar.
Okay, so that's when it comes to coatings on the bar, the number one takeaway: avoid chrome. One, it makes the steel brittle. Two, you're going to end up having to pay for it later anyways.
Exactly.
Back to the regular people and the rest of the world to be able to watch. As I choke on air. So let's go through the process of from someone scouting out equipment all the way through to the order until it's delivered and in their gym. Enlighten people as to how that happens so that they understand why you order it and it's not like Amazon fucking Prime. It's in your facility the next day, set up, ready to go.
I mentioned Paramount in the beginning, and then we sort of got sidetracked. Paramount, what they would do is they would project, and they were one of the grandfathers in the industry. They were around since 1954, no longer in business. There's another company that uses their name for doing some light Chinese import stuff. But the old Paramount over in California, which was like the equipment over at Gold's Gym, it was their proving ground. What they would do is, let's say for lat pull downs, if they did an average of 120 lat pull downs a month in a certain quarter, they would build 150. That means they count on that 120 and they'd have 30 some left over. So they can have like 75% of your order built right there and ready. And then when you're next, because they would do all the lat pull downs at once, then they do all the leg extensions at once, and they do all the leg presses at once. Every other manufacturer in this industry builds them one at a time. So if you're getting a lat pull down, a seated row, cable crossover, as soon as your order comes up, that's what they build. So it's a different kind of formula. It's because we don't know what you guys are going to buy. And with strength equipment, to store it, build it and store it, you're talking a lot of space. Now once it's built, okay, what color are you going to make the frame? So now you leave all these machines out there that are not painted. Now they're going to rust. So there's a lot of things that you don't think about in the manufacturing end. For big equipment, they don't have like for Toyota or some of these, they don't have million square foot warehouses to set stuff up. So it is a timely process, and even before this COVID bullshit started, you're probably still talking about 4 to 8 weeks, in the best case scenario. So they try to become more efficient. It's just that there's so many different varieties and SKUs. Like even that Tibbet Dorsey flexion machine from Atlantis. There's so many cuts and welds and angles on that thing for that little device. You can't just have you, you just can't build 100 of them at a time because they don't know how many they're going to sell. I don't know,
okay, and then from there, like when someone goes first, they get their quote, they place their order, they get their lead time. So once it's manufactured and ready to go, what kind of influences the shipping time? Because lead time and everything, that's one thing for the manufacturing to be done. But then there's that second part, getting it from the manufacturer in the door and set up.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that plays out. Once it goes on the truck, it's really in the hands of the company. And we're always going to look for the best deal, but the best deal on the freight companies doesn't always be the best service. So we don't know how many. If we have a full trailer dedicated to your gym, he's going to make a beeline to your gym. But you're talking about buying a complete gym worth of equipment. We're usually going to have like a quarter truck or a half truck, which means other people's equipment's going to be on that truck with yours, whether it be all dedicated to weight equipment, or it might be, barrels filled with oil or air conditioners, or we just have no control once that stuff gets on the truck. But they do have a pretty good route where, we know where it's going to end up about what time. In the way things are going with this COVID right now, the trucking industry is being crippled because they don't have the help in the warehouse. The logistics departments suck. They lose orders. So backing up. So you put the order in, it gets on the truck, and then it makes a beeline for a port or a warehouse or wherever they have a holding terminal. Then it gets offloaded, maybe another truck where somebody picks up that same trailer, and then they divvy up the route. So there's a lot of things that happen, but that's usually pretty streamlined. Getting it from the manufacturer to your installer, then the installer brings it over to your gym. That's putting another person in the mix. So that installer has a schedule with other things going on. But what typically happens is, and this happens for this is where the manufacturers bitch. You're like, man, we got to have this by this date. This date's got to happen. It's got to happen. Okay, they get it on the dock, ready to go. Don't worry, I can't take it. I don't have the CFO. My flooring's not down. Now they gotta store a whole freaking truck worth of equipment back in the warehouse or take it off the truck. It takes time, and that happens with all new constructions like clockwork. So I'd always recommend whatever your lead time is, when you tell the manufacturer, I need it shipped by this date, be pretty damn certain that you need it shipped by that date. So when that truck rolls, they're not rolling back without you spending money to put it in the warehouse. So have a plan B. Have like a storage container or a friend with the warehouse, or if you're an installer, which I can match you up with. I have installers all over the nation. So if you don't want to get your hands dirty, if you don't want to deal with it, but we need to make sure they have warehouse space, because if they have a full truck show up, they need it out of that warehouse within days. And if it's going to be 30 days until you get your CFO, they're going to need to be compensated. And I had that happen with the gym here in Arizona. It was like, man, I need to have it. I need to have it by this date. And I did everything I could, pressing the manufacturer in every way possible. Get the truck here. I don't have any. I can't get in. I can't put it in. I can't even get into the building. So then we had to get storage containers, right? So yeah, it's those things that kind of blindside you. So, the manufacturers are usually pretty good once they get them on the truck. They want it down the road as fast as possible so they can get paid, squared up with, and make life easy.
Oh, so that's interesting. There's so many, like, from the buyer's perspective, you never think about, installer, truck, this truck is also coming from 4 other things, and then it still has to be coordinated with the actual manufacturer, who has to order a truck just coming pick up your shit to then send it to you. And then you got to hope that somewhere along there, either a truck doesn't break down. If it's crossing borders, it gets across without issue. You pay your customs, your duties. It gets put on the boat that it was supposed to get put on, not sitting in, like, using the United States as an example, not sitting at the Port of Long Beach, Los Angeles, Houston, Miami, or the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. It just wasn't able to get loaded on that boat, and now you have to wait for the next boat just to arrive that's going to be going to the same port from there.
Right.
So like that, yeah, like even I didn't, like, having ordered a few things now, I haven't thought about that. It's just like, okay, it's shipped. What's the holdup? You gave me a quote as to when it's going to arrive, and like I'm set to have it arrive at this day. What's going on?
Like you said earlier, it's not like Amazon, where thousands and thousands of stuff that's built and ready to ship. It's got to be made for you.
Yeah, and then it's got to be able to fit on a truck too, because gym equipment isn't small. Like Atlantis ships their stuff basically fully assembled. You just put the weight horns on certain things. Prime ships stuff either fully assembled or in a massive crate that you're not going to be moving by hand. I'll just put it that way, because their stuff is fucking massively heavy. Like I still remember like where I'm sitting right now was where my last summer my rack was sitting, and I'm on the 22nd floor of a building, and I had a rack sitting right here. So imagine having to bring that up 22 floors. Service elevator helps, but you still have to take it out of the crate, get it onto the service elevator in pieces, bring it up, have room to lay it out, and then assemble it. I'm thankful that I've got 10-foot ceilings, and enough space here once I cleared out space in order to do it. But like, there's so many moving parts that no one thinks about except for the people who have to deal with those moving parts.
And by all means, when you do your build out in your gym, if you can get double doors, you're going to make life a hell of a lot easier on yourself. Or a roll up garage door. Yep, a lot of guys order stuff, and it's got to go downstairs, like you were mentioning. It is brutal. There's so many things that can go wrong. Don't count on the trucking company to help you. They're gonna roll up curbside, and here you go. So
you're gonna be sitting there just like, how am I going to get this to work?
Exactly. It's not complicated, but when you deal with very heavy pieces of equipment, it makes even like Atlantis with their preacher curl bench. Man, it's a two-man job just to move that preacher curl bench. And I've had I was on an install a long time ago, and I got this high school that wanted to buy this cheap equipment, and the person I was with, they were used to doing deliveries of Atlantis with me, and they were like, "Hey, hold on, let me get somebody to help you with that." I'm like, "What, are you shitting me?" I picked their preacher curl up with one hand, and I walked it down 100 yards to the other end of the room, and actually, the person was surprised. They're like, they didn't think that equipment could be that light. And so there's just junk equipment out there. It looks good, like some of these Taiwanese companies like Matrix. It looks massive. It looks sexy in the brochures, but it does not hold up for the kind of punishment that we do to it. When you wear out your strength equipment as quick as you do your cardio equipment, there's something wrong with it. Atlantis is something you buy for 30 years. Prime is something you buy for 30 years. Even free motion, it's a lifelong investment.
Yeah. And it's like although a lot of stuff now, like prices across a lot of these companies, the high quality and even like a tier down below that, their prices are fairly comparable now. But like, even though the prices are comparable, there's still a distinct difference in just the quality, either the quality of the steel that they're using or the workmanship in their welds. Like some companies, they'll do a quick little, like in a university gym I've seen where it's like equipment where it's like, oh yeah, just hand welded, and it's like a kid in ninth grade shop class could have done that weld. And then you've got other companies where it's like it's either robotically welded or it's someone who that is all they do for a living is they just weld, and it looks incredible. And then you've got other companies where they'll ship you your stuff. Their stuff is cheaper than everybody else's. You'll see it in every CrossFit gym. but you have to assemble everything using nuts and bolts. And anytime there's nuts and bolts, there's going to be a little bit of movement. And certain things like racks can take that, but other pieces of equipment, you want certain joints to be welded, in my opinion.
That's true. And keep in mind, even nuts and bolts, when you look at the top or the head of a bolt, oftentimes you'll see little like lines on them. When you see 3 lines, it's a grade 5 hardened bolt. You always add 2. So there's companies like Bodymaster and Paramount, they would use grade 8 hardened bolts. So if you have the material like on the frame that is capable of taking the torque of a grade 8 hardened bolt, which means you can tighten it down like you're putting together a locomotive. I mean, because they're held together with nuts and bolts too. But you're not going to go to Ace Hardware and get locomotive bolts. So, you know what I'm saying? So the nuts and bolts, provided that you have the right grade and that you have a higher gauge steel. You know, some of the bullshit that the industry plays, they'll say, oh, we have like 11 gauge steel or we have 7 gauge steel. They'll come up with a great, you know, number saying, oh my God, it's 7 gauge steel. This thing's built like a Mack truck. Then you find out it's only like one little bracket they have. It was like 8. And then what they do is they use the cheap shit Ace Hardware bolts on there, which means the tubes that they have, you can tell because as soon as you start tightening it down, you can see them do this. That's just cheap shit metal. You know, so you just can't have any holes on those. I mean, they won't hold up.
No, like that's a good point as well when just assembling things, the fit of things. How are things going to warp? Are they actually going to be, is it what they market it as being? Like, I think most racks are made out of 11 gauge. I always mix up if 11 gauge, no, 7 gauge is fatter than 11 gauge. Most racks are made out of 11 gauge steel using like 3x3 hollow. One of my clients, he looks at it and he knows exactly what it is. To me, it's like speaking Chinese, but I'm like, yeah, it's good.
Well, have you ever watched that show Forged in Fire? You know, these guys, they make their blades and then they test them.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see that when they have like a defect in that blade, or if they have a pocket, or if they do some, it shows up in the test. It'll break, or it won't maintain its edge. It's the same kind of metal we have in weight equipment. You know, same kind of theory. If they do a shit job of making those tubings and those material, it's the welds are going to not hold. I mean, the bolts you're going to see, you know, the tubes bend in when you tighten them down, and you know it's going to be a shit piece of equipment.
Okay, that's good. So coming from all this, let's bring this all full circle. And this is where we get to kind of plug you directly. And how can people follow you, find where you are, and reach out to you to purchase, get to know who you are, and follow kind of what it is you do? So your website, your social channels, all that kind of stuff, so that we can kind of highlight Jim Fischer and Reps Fitness, or Reps in Fitness. Sorry, I always say it wrong.
Reps in Fitness. Well, the industry sort of knows me as Jimmy Reps, just simply because they spell my name wrong. Fisher spelled with a C, F-I-S-C-H-E-R. And, you know, Reps, they kind of put the 2 and 2 together. Maybe it's an East Coast thing. I don't know. But if you Google search Jimmy Reps, something will pop up sooner or later. I've not been very active on the social media because I have a very good referral network. You know, people like yourself, they find out what I do, that I do a good job at it, if not the best in the industry. And they want me to take care of, you know, setting up their equipment, finding the right piece for them, getting the right deal for them, making it as low stress and easy to do business as possible. But my website, repsinfitness.com, is the easiest way to see my products. And I don't have everything on there. That's like a job in itself. But email jimmy@repsinfitness.com. I'll take a personal email or reply to anybody. Facebook, if somebody wants to take me on my personal Facebook page. So anybody can, you know, message me right from Facebook there as well.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to thank you very much for taking time out of your evening this evening for this, and so that we can inform people a little bit more as to what goes on behind the orders of equipment for gyms, and why sometimes, okay, you order something, 6 months until it's there. Okay, now we can see parts of reasons why. Some companies, when you're doing something one piece at a time, the quality is going to be there. It's handcrafted, handmade, so that takes a little bit longer in and of itself. And then you've got the shipping component on there, which depending on the distance, location, the modes of transportation required, that's going to add time to an order as well. So it's good to get for me, it's good as well to see why lead times are what they are, and then the actual time to delivery is what they are. I'm spoiled living where I am based on who I order from, being a short truck drive away from both. Whereas some people like Sydney, Australia, they need a boat.
Right.
Or London, UK, they also need a boat for anything to get there. And you're the guy that people can talk to of ways to solve that issue for them.
Basically, I'm an orchestrator. I conduct and make sure all the pieces, make sure they fits into the formula of what you're trying to accomplish, which I'm very well aware with, because I've known Charles, for years, way before he even started the Polican, coaching network. He would show me his pamphlets, say, "What do you think? Read this. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me about the testing." So I was behind the scenes way before this was in its infancy. So when we have a piece of equipment, let's say, for example, you're opening up in 6 months, and you wanted to get 2 pieces from this company, and they're just simply not going to happen. I will take you to the next best option, and if that doesn't work, to the next best option, and say, you know what, we need to go for this one because you need to have it right now. It's a tool. So let's plan it. Let's talk about it. This will be good enough to get you started, but let's plan in 2 years that we're going to recycle this out, start talking to another coach, and then we'll get the right one ordered, and we'll cycle that one in. Because without the tool, you can't do your job. I know the history of the industry, so I can help match you up with the next best thing if the one thing you really want is not available in the right time.
Yeah. And that's a great way for us to kind of cap this all off.